I guess I should ask Leigh this question. Where does the story in Insidious come about?
The story for Insidious was something that started with James and I trading ghost stories. It's kind of an organic process. I mean, as long as we've known each other, we've kind of told each other these ghost stories, things that we've heard from people we've known, whether it be family or friends, and we've kind of built up this stockpile of really creepy ghost stories. And eventually it gets to the point where you're like, we really need to utilize these stories in a film. So essentially, it's almost like the story of Insidious was created simply as a spine to hang these ghost stories off, you know. We can just come out with any old crap and just hang it off, you know. It's like creating an action film.
Leigh, you should give your writing a bit more credit than that.
No more credit.
You write your script like the same way the Zucker brothers write their comedies.
It's just a device to hang gags off.
Just gags, yeah.
I mean, it kind of almost is like that. I mean, we feel like we have a really good story, but we're utilising all this stuff that we've heard over the years and putting
as inspiration. Yeah, I mean, Leigh and I did have the genesis of the through line, the story through line. But we have all these scary stories that we've heard over the years, right? That we always felt would be amazing in a scary movie. And so, you know, back then when we would hear these stories, they would send chills up our spines. And you know, Leigh and I would look at each other and go, why don't we apply that sort of you know, that kind of thinking into the movie that we're trying to make here? And so we did. You know, granted. You know, we have to rejig certain things. You know, the story didn't just kind of like fall into places. We have to rejig it to fit the actual main story of the film. But I guess in a lot of ways, I think why some of the scare scenes are as effective as they are is because in a lot of ways they were based on true stories.
Let's talk about the creative process, the collaboration between both of you. Has there been times that there's been conflicts and how to resolve them and who wins?
This is interesting. It depends what sort of conflicts you're talking about. If it's creative, usually I'll have an idea and I'll tell James about it and he'll just shoot it down and that's the end of the discussion. Yeah. If you're talking about physical conflicts, where we oil each other down and get into some Greco-Roman wrestling, I'm winning every time. I'll pin James inside of 30 seconds and I'll like, you know, I'll be like, go on, you know. I'll be like, smell, I'll be like, you know, I'll make him smell the dirt. I'll push his face into the dirt, hold him down, you know.
So that's how you resolve your conflict?
Yeah, I say, apologise, and he says no, and then I twist his arm, and he's like, sorry, and then I leave it.
From a work standpoint, Leigh and
you just started as if they're not even going to use that answer. You just started as if he just answered that question.
I know they're going to cut it out.
Sorry.
They're going to cut it out, so I'm just going to pretend like that wasn't even been said.
What, you think they're going to cut it out? You think prospectors find big hunks of gold amongst rock, brush away the gold and keep the rock? They take the gold home.
Keep the dirt.
That's what's worth something.
Leigh and I like to, we usually cook up concepts together, you know, like I may have something that I throw at him and you know, whether or not, you know, sometimes he likes it, sometimes he doesn't like
Usually
it.
a piece of paper or a rock.
Exactly, a rock, something heavy that would hurt. But yeah, we kind of like bat ideas back and forth. You know, like he'll throw an idea for me, and then I'll add to that, and he'll add to my idea. And really, by the end of it, we don't really know who kind of started the concept, except we know.
But our lawyers are trying to figure it out. It's a huge
pending lawsuit. No, but it's a great process because at the end of the day, it's a very collaborative process, and.
James will often say to me, he's like, let's work as a team and do it my way. And that's really our credo for working.
That's true. That's true.
The influences of this movie, we sense some Hitchcock and from the music and even graphics and lightings. So where else do you draw your influences from?
Well, it's funny that you say Hitchcock because maybe not necessarily Hitchcock because that guy's actually a good filmmaker.
You don't consider yourself one?
No, I'm kidding. But definitely a big inspiration from an aesthetic standpoint for Insidious were based on a lot of more classical, old-school horror films. You know, like the black and white films that they used to make back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. You know, like the Hammer horror films to some degree, and The Haunting, yep. The original Haunting, not the remake, and movies like The Innocents or The Changeling. I find these films are really unnerving and creepy, but yet you never really see anything. You know, they don't shock you with blood and guts, and that's what I really wanted to capture. That classic. I'm somewhat of a classicist. You know, I really love that. I mean, that's the kind of film that I love to make, and it's so weird that Saw is considered a very contemporary, scary movie, because to me, it was actually in a lot of ways made like a very classical, old school way, you know, like it has very suspenseful moments, but at the same time, it has moments that today's kids kind of want to see more, which is, you know, the fun stuff, as I call them, the, you know, the more blood and guts, the visceral stuff. And even the first Saw had that in a very finite amount, you know, it wasn't a lot of it. With Insidious, I really want to prove that we can make a scary, suspenseful movie without, you know, without resorting to, you know, just your typical blood and guts, and it's not needed in a classical ghost story film.
Referring to the series of Saw movies, we can't escape it seems that the series of movies meditates on this topic of the value of life.
Right.
What would you say Insidious would be injects a certain kind of moral issues into it?
I have my theme when I was directing it, but I know Leigh definitely has his when he was writing it, so I'll let him speak on that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's a few different things for me, but one of the things for Insidious, in my opinion, is the march of time. This thing that we're all getting older, that there is this great unknown waiting out there, that we're all going to die. And that's why, you know, you see that in the film. The character of Renee is reflecting on her marriage, how she used to be young. She wanted a career in music. You know, Josh, the character played by Patrick Wilson, is plucking out grey hairs and worrying about getting older. And it's this, to me, that's what the ticking clock in the film represents, to me, is the march of time. That we're all going along, and then there's this great beyond, and it all ties into the story of this boy who's in a coma. And only a couple of the reviewers have really picked up on that, and I've been really happy when they have.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's really great when Leigh writes. He likes to have the concept in mind first before he can actually write it, because once he has the theme and the concept, the theme worked out, it really kind of like channels the path and the way he would write the script, and I think that's a great writing process for him. For me too. The theme is no different to kind of what Leigh has mentioned, but for me, the theme of the film, when I was directing it, is really the loss of innocence, and which ties in with what Leigh is saying.
Yeah.
Getting older, you know, the older you get, you lose your innocence. And this film, in a lot of ways, is depicted, you know, in a classical horror movie way, which is, you know, monsters come after you, and that's how you lose your innocence, right? And it's not just the main boy. Without giving the backstory away, it happens to another character as well within the movie, and so it's this, I think, recurring theme in the film, and that was one of the things that I was, you know, that I really kind of latched onto for me. When I was making it.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's definitely a thing relating to that where, you know, older people, and as you get older, you want to be young again, and that theme is depicted very literally in the film of, shall we say, older people wanting to be young again. It's depicted in a very literal horror film way.
Yeah, horror movie way, yes.
And that's really what it's about.